Last night, the panel show that Scott Jennings performs on CNN absolutely erupted, as it sometimes does, but this time they went nutso on Scott, and I think it's because they're pretty tired of him being right all the time. We're going to show you that in a second, but first, here's the topic, a question. It had to do with Secretary of Education Linda McMahon. Now, she was conducting hearings yesterday on Capitol Hill. She was a witness about her budget and about the plans for the Department of Education. And the Democrats had this weird talking point about the curriculum and how it associates with doing away with DEI. Now, I don't think these guys really know what DEI means, but let's look at the questioning and then we'll break it down.
Two really quick questions. Do you think that Holocaust education in our schools is a DEI program? There's no card for that. That's just yes or no.
I can look at whatever card.
Holocaust education, is it a DEI? You can have a press conference to say whatever you want. I just need a quick answer to
Your
this.
soliloquy
Is Holocaust, because this is my time, is Holocaust education a DEI program?
No.
Is African American Studies a DEI
I
program?
think I answered that with one.
I'm
of the
asking
other
it again.
callers. Listen, we should
Just
be able,
yes or no?
We should be able to teach
My
courses in their
point is they
entirety.
are DEI programs, both of them, because students need diversity, equity, and inclusion to understand their environments. So both Holocaust education and the teaching of African American history are important, which is why the state of Connecticut requires it in our social studies curriculum. You're talking out of both sides of your mouth. You can't support one without supporting the other. And looking at what happens in the schools and actually deferring to teachers, parents who are on curriculum committees, local boards of education, and states who actually do the hard work, and listening to what they say would be incredibly helpful in this role.
Okay, so a couple of things here. First of all, 100% agree with the radical left-wing angry Democrat there. You're right. The local parents and the local teachers and the local school board should have the ability to do that. That's why we got to get rid of the Department of Education and stop tying education funds with all of these ridiculous strings like leftists and Democrats do all the time. Get rid of all of it. And if you want to put whatever curriculum you want to put into your local school system and poison the minds of the kids in your community, go right ahead. I don't care. Just let me do the opposite if I want to in my community. That said, when the Department of Education and the Trump administration announced that they were doing away with DEI programs for the school systems, did anybody think that meant Holocaust education or African American studies or any kind of curriculum? I mean, no, you realize that our school systems have to create departments of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they focus on things that have nothing to do with the curriculum. That's the problem. It has to do with who's being hired and who's being represented and whether we're going to have Pride Week this week and whether we're going to, rename the school because we don't like the name of that old white man general that it's named after. So we're going to name it after some socialist, Latino, bisexual, transgender person. That's the problem with all the DEI crap. It's these departments and divisions and vice presidents and human resources directors and the division after division after division that sucks all this money that never ends up in the classroom teaching the kids. That's why we oppose the DEI programs in our public schools, all of these mandates that have nothing to do with education. But somehow they're twisting this and warping this into having to do with subjects that are being taught in the classroom, which, I mean, I try to stay on top of these things, but I never saw that as a federal government issue related to DEI. Now, listen, there were critical race theory and gender studies curriculum that got weaseled into the system. That's not a DEI issue. That's just a radical left-wing agenda that got injected in. And yeah, that should be done away with. But that moment and a couple of other moments that had been set up and scripted for Linda McMahon, well, they got picked up by CNN, almost like CNN knew it was coming. And when it came time for Abby Phillips to present it to the panel show, she did it in the fair and unbiased way she always does. Actually, that's not true. The way she presents this topic is quite possibly one of the most biased, atrocious, obnoxious ways I've seen for a person who pretends like she actually doesn't have an agenda. She's just a straight down the middle journalist, right? Well, it's subtle, but maybe you can pick up on it.
Linda McMahon was grilled on Capitol Hill today over her department's DEI cuts, and the former WWE executive turned education authority didn't sound all that comfortable with the facts.
Would you say that it would be an illegal DEI for a lesson plan on the Tulsa Race Massacre?
I'd have to get back to you on that.
Do you know what the Tulsa Race Massacre is?
I'd like to look into it more and get back to you on it.
Okay, so I look forward to that. How about the book Through My Eyes by Ruby Bridges, for instance?
I haven't read that.
Have you learned about Ruby Bridges?
If you have specific examples you'd like
That was a
to cite,
specific example.
After her department demanded schools sign a certification declaring they were DEI free, McMahon was asked to clarify whether or not teaching African American history is now illegal.
I do not think that African studies or Middle East studies or Chinese studies are part of DEI if they are taught as part of the total history package. So that if you're giving the facts on both sides, of course they're not DEI.
I don't know what both sides of African American history would be.
What is the other side of African American history?
Yeah, like I said, it was subtle. Maybe you picked up on it. It began with her being described as former WWE executive and now education expert. We see you, Abby. We see you. You're about as subtle as an elephant's, but that's fine. I don't need to pile on Abby Phillips because you know who's sitting right there. Look at him. He's got his hand on his chin. He's thinking it through. He's waiting for his entree. Studying the Holocaust part of DEI? What about this book by Ruby Bridges? What are you kidding me? Ruby Bridges, absolutely. That's critically important for the Secretary of Education to respond to. Okay, let's watch how the panel discussion unfolds.
That is definitely true. But this president has also said that it's about merit, that they want to get DEI out of every part of American life. Why on earth, then, do they have someone who seems not prepared or qualified, perhaps, for the job that she's been placed in?
You know, the main difference between this cabinet and the Biden cabinet is that these people are actually allowed to go in and see the president, unlike the Biden cabinet, who were apparently not allowed to see.
Are you going to
sitting
answer?
president.
Are you
That's
going to
not true.
answer for?
The only
Are you going to
thing-
answer
the
for
only
this, or are you
thing-
going to change
the only thing I care about for the education secretary, the literal only thing I care about, is what they are doing to close the Department of Education. I don't care how many books she's read. I don't care what answers to gotcha questions she has. I just want to know how quickly can we close the department.
How is that a gotcha question to ask? Do you know what the Tulsa Race Massacre is, or do you know who Ruby Bridges is?
You know what the answer to that question she should have given?
Yeah.
She should have said, Congresswoman Lee, it was Summer Lee asking the question, as a Congresswoman in Pittsburgh, why is it that when you were asked to vote, is anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism, you chose the side of the terrorists? How is it when you were asked to condemn anti-Semitism on campus? That's an education issue. She took the side of the terrorists. Summer Lee is the exact wrong person, and it's faux outrage for Democrats to sit here and take Summer Lee's side against Linda
I want to
McMahon.
play, because since you brought up the anti-Semitism of it all, she was pressed by a different congressperson about all the different things that you may or may not be allowed to teach in American universities. Listen to this.
Would the Harvard government department be compelled to hire faculty that believe the 2020 election was stolen?
I believe that there are rights to freedom of speech, but on campuses and universities of colleges and universities across the country, freedom of speech should be allowed.
Does refusing to hire a Holocaust denier as a member of Harvard's history department faculty count as an ideological litmus test?
I believe that there should be diversity of viewpoints relative to teachings and opinions on campuses.
You know, if I were her, if I may just jump in there, I would say, you know, that's a really interesting question about the Holocaust denier being on a college campus and stuff like that. Tell you what, let me think on that. But while we're at the whole question and answer testing thing, can I ask you a question real fast, Congressman Purple Jacket? Can I ask you a question? Can a man be pregnant? Can a man get pregnant? When you can answer that question, I'll answer your question. This is obscene, ridiculous. You saw they had the charts. They all had their script. They all had their bullet points. They all had their rehearsed stuff. And of course, they gave CNN a heads up. Oh, make sure you grab this video. It's going to be great. Trust me. We're going to get her. We're going to get her. We're going to get her. And well, I guess they got the panel show they wanted, but I don't know if they got all of the reactions they were expecting.
A diversity of viewpoints about Holocaust denying?
That's not what she said. That's not what she said. That is not at all what just happened there.
Hold on.
She's saying that college faculty are uniformly partisan, liberal, progressive, radical.
All right. And I guess let me just read again what was just said. The question, does refusing to hire a Holocaust denier as a member of Harvard's history department count as an ideological litmus test? She says, I believe there should be diversity of viewpoints relative to teachings and opinions on campus. I don't understand.
She was not answering what is a patently ridiculous question. And no Republican should take any lectures about anti-Semitism right now from Democrats.
But why on earth would she not be able to answer that question?
She has the same answer that every Republican has had for time immemorial. Why isn't there any diversity of viewpoint in the faculty at a college?
So what is the answer?
It was a joke of a question.
Okay.
It was a joke of a question.
So what's the
answer?
What's the answer?
The answer
is it an ideological litmus test to have a Holocaust denier be asked to ask?
That's not an ideological. Is there an ideological litmus test that you have to believe in progressive radicalism to get hired now? Because that's what it seems like to us.
Holocaust denialism.
That's the box they have to check. Card-carrying, textbook anti-Semitism. She wasn't responding to that. She wasn't responding to that, and is a patently ridiculous assertion.
Why are you assuming that she wasn't responding to that when she gave
answer? Because I'm a thinking human being who can see what a rational person would say to a ridiculous question.
She didn't say that's a ridiculous question.
You were totally misconstruing this.
Scott, literally, we played it for the American people to see.
Yeah, and every single person's going to see it my way.
She literally did not answer. She did not answer the question the way you want to answer the question, and that question has an answer. What is the answer?
The answer to that question is you're an idiot. To that congressman. That is the answer to that question.
What is the answer? Will the federal government, if somebody comes in and says, I don't believe the Holocaust really happened, will the federal government bring the hammer down on universities for saying that is not a viewpoint that we are allowing on our campuses?
The question would be
that the answer ought to be no, but it sounds like neither of you want to give an answer.
No, the answer ought to be what kind of litmus test is Harvard putting on its faculty now?
Yes.
Only 3% of its faculty are Republicans.
I mean, she didn't have a note card in front of her to tell her the answer, and this is what happens when you have somebody who lied about having an education degree. They didn't teach about the Holocaust maybe when she was getting her French degree.
If
she actually has that.
You're accusing her of being a Holocaust?
No. Hold on a second.
This is outrageous.
Excuse me, Scott. Stop. Everybody stop for a second.
I told you they're getting sick and tired of Scott Jennings being so good and so right. This is such a setup. This was such a plan. I mean, set up from the congressman as well at the panel. They knew they had this, and they decided to create this entire scenario. Jennings is not having it. But this may be, I mean, we watch this show all the time. This is our show prep for you guys every day. We love Jennings and what he does on this show. This is one of the most Looney Tunes panel discussions they've ever had, based on complete and total bull. 100%. And for Abby, I'm sorry. Abby Phillips is either as stupid as Karine Jean-Pierre, or she's play acting here. Why can't she answer that question? Well, first of all, it's amazing to me that it is determined a Holocaust denier is in some way someone who has an ideology. That's just a weird description for somebody who denies the Holocaust. But the obvious question there proposed to the Secretary of Education is that, oh, okay, so we're going to set up certain ideological litmus tests or certain criteria. I mean, honestly, if I'm hiring somebody for the history department at a university, and they deny as historic fact an event that happens, that has nothing to do with ideology. That has to do with their competence as a historian, right? For instance, if you're hiring somebody for, let's say, the biology department, and they deny that there are two sexes and only two sexes, that's also the denial of fact. That's not ideology. That's somebody who is incompetent. See, think that through for a minute. And you want to carry this out based on the logic that the Democrats and Abby Phillips and this panel of left-wingers are trying to thrust upon Scott Jennings. Why can't you just say that you won't hire a Holocaust denier? It's like, well, that's a stupid question. It's like saying, why can't you just say you won't hire somebody who denies the basic biological reality that there are only two sexes, male and female? You see, because in the biology department, maybe that is true. Maybe the people who actually do respect science at a college or university do maintain that scientific fact, but not in the dean's office, not in the president's office, not in the HR office, not in the LGBTQ gay rights department at the college and university, and sadly these days, not in the athletics department. You see the point? Frankly, I don't want my Secretary of Education answering a question like that, because you see it for what it is. But boy, was this a setup. And it gets even crazier. Now that Abby Phillips has calmed everybody down, watch it play out to the end.
Excuse me, Scott. Nobody accused her of being a Holocaust denier.
You're implying
Scott,
that that's what she wants.
No one did
You're
that.
implying.
It is completely...
The line of inquiry here
just
is an
stop for just a
implication that
second.
she's like, sure,
it is
let's do that.
completely disingenuous for you to sit at this table and say that we accused her of being a Holocaust
I think it's
denier.
disingenuous to portray this interaction the way you are.
Absolutely
That's my view.
no one said that. It is
How are you portraying
disingenuous.
it? How are you portraying
It's
it?
disingenuous. It's disrespectful.
I think
wrong.
the question was
So,
disingenuous.
excuse me.
It was a disingenuous question. from
How
Congressman
is it
Clinton.
a disingenuous question? The other part of the question is, if you are an election denier, and Harvard said you can't be an election denier and teach at this school, is that a litmus test?
The question is, what litmus test is Harvard putting on its faculty?
Okay,
We
listen,
know they have one
we gotta
set of
go,
ideology.
but it is very clear that neither of you want to answer a very simple question.
So now you're accusing
Are you
us.
allowed?
Are you accusing us?
Is Harvard?
Are you accusing him and me?
Is Harvard allowed, or
Go
any
ahead and do
school,
it.
is any school allowed to say that these are facts, and if you don't believe in facts, you cannot teach here? Are they allowed to do that?
The question is, what is the litmus test
Scott,
today?
don't
and what
do
kind of
not
faculty do you
answer
want?
my
Do you want
question.
people who all have the same
Do
views
not,
or a
when you
diversity
answer
of
my
views?
question with a question, you are dodging.
When
So
you
answer
ask me,
the
when you ask
question.
me questions that I think are kind of ridiculous framing of this issue, then I think
How
you're
is it a
misconstruing the
ridiculous
issue.
framing?
Because
You
she-
either believe that there are things that are facts or you don't.
I do believe in facts, and I also
Okay.
believe that that member of Congress was creating a disingenuous, ridiculous question designed for this gotcha moment right here.
Okay, it is very telling that you are not able or willing to even entertain an answer. You could answer
I
the
gave you
question
an
right
answer.
now and you
Harvard has a
refuse
right-
to do it.
Wait a minute.
Look,
No, Harvard has a right to have any
Okay.
litmus test they want for their faculty. They're a private institution.
Okay,
They
all
can-
right. Well, there's the answer to your question. Thank you, Brad. I appreciate that. Coming up next, Karine Jean-Pierre.
You can tell the tension there. You can tell the hostility. You can tell exactly what was at play there. And you heard what Abby Phillips said there at the end, that it's very telling, Scott. It's telling that you won't answer that question. Remember earlier when Scott Jennings says, listen, the whole purpose of this is to imply that if you won't say, no, a Holocaust denier should not be hired by a college, if you can't say that, then that means you must be a Holocaust denier too. Scott Jennings made that point, and then just a minute later, the host of that program herself used those words. It's telling that you won't answer the question. I don't know if you saw. Let me get to it real fast, because Scott Jennings gave her a look when she said that. Watch here. Let me get her right back up there.
Framing.
Because
You either believe that there are things that are facts or you don't.
I do believe in facts, and I also
Okay.
believe that that member of Congress was creating a disingenuous, ridiculous question designed for this gotcha moment right here.
Okay, it is very telling that you are not able or willing to even.
See that? Do you see that moment? When she said it's very telling, and Scott Jennings went. Because Abby Phillips right there is implying that Scott Jennings in some way doesn't want to get on the bad side of Holocaust deniers. That's what this whole thing was set up to do. I told you it was mayhem on the show last night. I told you that the panel absolutely erupted at Scott Jennings, and as usual, he held his own. I'll tell you this now. CNN has a problem on their hands. That show and the relationship between those two, that's a problem. They need to resolve it. Now, in my mind, the answer is to get rid of everyone else making noise on that panel and give Scott Jennings his own show. They either do that, or they're in danger of losing him and losing whatever they've got left as an audience.